So first of all, I would like to thank IIIT for giving us this opportunity to present our work. So the title of our project is Sustaining Social Balance and Peace in the Post-COVID-19 Pandemic, a study in the light of Maqasid al-Shari'ah approach. So myself is Dr. Ramzi Bendabka from the Department of Political Science, and we have Dr. Amal Fattan and Dr. Ibrahim Sugar. I will try to go straight to the point. So we start with the research question that we asked it in our project. So the first one is, what are the main manifestations of social instability during the COVID-19 period? Means what and how COVID-19 may harm the social stability and social balance in our countries. And then the second question, how can we benefit from Maqasid al-Shari'ah to minimize the impact of post-COVID-19 on our societies? Means to minimize the negative impact and to minimize the harm that we got it from the COVID-19. The objectives is to highlight the emergence of social problems and issues resulting from the disease. The second one is to look at the work that has been done to find solutions to current social issues and the problems. And finally, to collaborate on the role of Maqasid al-Shari'ah in protecting and sustaining communities during and post-COVID-19. The hypothesis: more individuals and groups harm and suffering lead to more social instability and insecurity. This is because society encompasses individuals who must be incoherent with their communities. As a result, the spread of individual aspects of mental illness, for example, discrimination, rights restrictions, can harm society and its stability. We have divided the literature into four aspects. The first one, policies and regulatory that have been done by organizations, international organizations, or by governments. The second one, the social balance and peace, and then the social instability during COVID-19, and finally Maqasid al-Shari'ah and society. Those are examples of the literature review that have been done in our study. And now, what is the gap? What we want to do with this literature review? So we found that reaction and functionality was not strategic during the COVID-19. What does it mean? For example, some governments, because of their regulations, they made what we call it, for example, the equal risk. What does it mean, equal risk? Equal risk means to minimize the spread of COVID-19, to minimize the infection of COVID-19, we must stay home. But staying home itself can create other problem, which is another risk. For example, may increase hunger, because not all the people can stay home without work, without employment. And therefore, that's what we call it, the equal work. And after a period of time, 2 months or 3 months, we are in this equality of 50-50. If we go outside, we may get infected. If we stay home, we are suffering hunger. And that's what we call it, the equal risk, that so many regulations didn't take it in consideration. Means the staying home itself became a problem. Also, there is another issue. For example, when we tell people staying home, what does it mean by this word home? Because some people, they don't even have this home. So we are telling almost 800 million people in this world, stay home means something they don't know. Because from the beginning, they don't have this concept of home, and they don't have home. Therefore, the vision was not comprehensive. Means just governments just try to deal with the COVID-19 without taking in consideration other factors or the risk that we need to take it in consideration. And finally, also, we found that there is no, what we call it, spirituality, means with the concern of mental health and so on, so forth. So this research was a humble try to do so, means to give this vision, Islamic view of regulations, and also trying to measure the policies and what have we seen by the governments and in different institutions. This is the terminology of social peace and Maqasid. The frame of this study. So the frame of this study, so we divided our frame into three dimensions. The first one, we deal with individual dimensions to make it easy to follow. The second one is the social dimension, and finally spiritual dimension. And after that, each dimension we divided into aspect or elements. We can say elements, for example, individual dimension we divided into inequality and discrimination, means we are going to follow inequality and discrimination. And the second one, the freedom limitation, and finally mental health issues. But how are we going to do this? How are we going to measure this? For example, inequality or freedom limitation or mental health issue. So what we have done, we have also come out with some indicators. So indicators to show, for example, inequality, we try to come out with some indicators like vaccination. So we followed data of vaccination during COVID-19, the e-learning and education, and finally healthcare access and basic life commodities. The same thing for the freedom and rights limitation, and finally the mental health issues. We have done this also with social dimension. As an example of the data, as we can see here, for example, vaccination during COVID-19, we can see that the low-income countries, it's the last line, which is the red line, means it's almost 100,000 doses only. Okay, when we can see, for example, the high-income countries, it's more 8 million within just a few months, within 2 or 3 months. Okay, and this is a high level of discrimination in terms of what we call it, in terms of vaccination. If we compare the regions, for example, I don't know if it's clear from here. If we compare regions, for example, we see the first one, America, and the second one, Europe, and the last two ones, it's African region. What we can see, the level of vaccination is, or the percentage of vaccination is just 1%. 1% of vaccination given to Africa. Now, how we can see the discrimination? The discrimination may be some scholars or maybe some expert might say it is because what we call it, as we can see here, it is because the infection was so low in Africa, and therefore the vaccination can be low also. It's 1%. Okay, but this is not the case when we go and we see it from a global level. And we can see this. What does it mean? This means because we have low infection, therefore they give us what? A low vaccination. But the problem is the vaccination itself became discriminative. For example, the red list that we have it in Europe, the limitation of movement. We cannot move without vaccination. And therefore, given this low rate of vaccination means for us, we cannot move. For example, talking about Africa. So how about the people who want to go overseas? How about the businesses? How about this, the students, for example? It's a way itself of discrimination during the COVID-19. What we can see other thing, for example, during the COVID-19, we moved to e-learning, e-governance, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. But what we compare, for example, the internet users around the world, we find that individuals are different and societies are different. What we can see on the right side, the developed countries, like for example, Canada, we can see that it's almost 93% or 98% of population have internet access, sorry. What we compare it to and the developing countries, we can see that countries like Eritrea, for example, is 1%. Only 1% of population have internet access. So how we can talk about e-learning? We can talk about this shifting from a normal life into e-learning, e-commerce, and e-governance. What we have this kind of differences, huge differences in terms of access, in terms of rights among people. Actually, I will try to go fast. Concerning the social, and we have studied one by one, means the indicators. When we talk about the social dimensions, we have a social distance, social trust and cohesion, and finally community engagement. For example, concerning this, we come out with some indicators. For example, when we talk about the social distance, yes, social distancing, sorry, is for the best over, but social isolation is not healthy in the long term. Social isolation, and therefore we have seen, for example, the question of mental health issues. The mental health issues within 2 years, we went from 11%, for example, the cases or the symptoms, reporting symptoms of depression, for example, from 11% in 2018 into 43% in 2021, 43% in 2022. So those are all outcomes of, for example, social distancing and the measures that we have it during the COVID-19. Also, the social trust, cohesion, places and communities left behind in reality. For example, we have differences between the cities, maybe better, the differences between the cities and rural areas, for example, was seen clearly during COVID-19. Building trust, but starting from a fragile position. Why? Because there is a discrimination. We discriminated some groups in our society, for example, as we talk about it in community engagement, the elderly, the homeless, physical or mental disabilities, people who are suffering from mental disabilities, for example. We didn't have special policies for them during COVID-19, and that's what may harm us in the long term. Also, when we talk about those social trust and cohesion, we have seen, for example, so many protests in Europe, specifically in France, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, talking about this discriminations and there is no justice in terms of distribution and so on and so forth, and that's what may unstable the society. The spiritual dimension, we implemented spiritual dimension as a Maqasidic approach into individual dimension and social dimension in order to help us tackle these issues and problems. So concerning the individual dimension, we use redistribution of wealth as one of the solutions, and we explain it in our research. The interest also and spirituality and mental well-being means implementing the Maqasid al-Shari'ah in terms of wealth, implementing Maqasid al-Shari'ah in terms of hifd al-aql. When we talk about spirituality and mental health, concerning the social dimension, we talk about morals and actions. Hifd is a part of hifd al-din and using social forces, because we didn't see this during the COVID-19, and even now in a post-COVID-19, still we didn't see what we call it the using of social forces. Social forces means civil society, for example, the role of the mosque, the role of the imams, the role of the academicians, and so on and so forth, in order to deal with different issues concerning the society. And then the justice and non-discrimination, the obligatory and non-obligatory expenses here when we talk about the role of zakat, the role of waqf, the role of sadaqah, and so on and so forth. And finally, protecting the weak people among the community. That's what we have done concerning the implementation of Maqasid al-Shari'ah. So we took every elements and we try to implement one of the maqasid, and we try to explain the way how we are going to do so. Okay, based on this research, actually we have published 2 articles, one in Revelation and Science, and the second one, digital services and social stability. When we talk here about different aspects concerning the internet access, talking about e-education and so on and so forth. And also we have attended international conference in Indonesia, representing UIA and the IIIT, also as the founder of the research, alhamdulillah. And we have one student is going to graduate, master student is going to graduate inshallah. So we consider that this research and this study, alhamdulillah, was successful. The next step, what's the next step? The next step is our target in the future, inshallah, is to check other indicators or even try to deal with other dimensions rather than individual and social dimensions, to continue developing a more comprehensive strategy in order to overcome the outcomes of COVID-19 and avoid social instability, inshallah. And maybe we can develop it into a book in the future, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.